Pretty stylish, I know. Here we are in my very exotic 2009 Subaru hatchback with 203,000 miles on it. And I don't want to flaunt it. I don't want to make you jealous. But we need to have a conversation about coveting. So here on this latest episode of Cat Shorts, get your Martin Luther or 16th century reformer hat equivalent, and let's talk turkey or 10-year-old sedans. So the 9th and 10th commandments that come in the book of Exodus and then are borrowed and riffed on in the small catechism are basically two variations on the same theme. Don't covet, which is a fancy old-fashioned way of saying don't be envious, don't be jealous of what belongs to somebody else, whether it's physical property like a very, very classy 2009 sedan, or the people involved in somebody else's life. Don't covet the relationships your neighbor has, their spouse, their kids, even in their employees. Instead, our older brother in the faith, Martin Luther, says, we are called to actively help and protect what our neighbor has for our neighbor. So instead of me trying to take what my neighbor has or be envious about that their grass looks greener, it looks a little bit greener, instead of me being envious about what they have and wanting to take it for myself, one, to do everything I can to help my neighbor be able to take care of what belongs to them, and for me to be content with and to use well what I have. So that ongoing idea we've been talking about the Lutheran twist, it's not just don't do this bad thing. It's not just don't be envious of what your neighbor has, but instead, that opens me up to a bunch of positive things. Well, I can be appreciative of what I have and recapture the gift that is contentment. After all, so much of our common life in the culture that we live in 21st century America, is built on us being taught to be dissatisfied with what we have. So many messages we have tell us you shouldn't be satisfied with the car you have, you shouldn't be satisfied with the way you look or the way your spouse looks, you shouldn't be satisfied with how popular your kids are, you shouldn't be satisfied with the size of your house or the amount of money in your pension, you shouldn't be happy with any of it, and it should always be permanently unsatisfied, never content, and always keep chasing after what they promise will make you happier. There's a reason, I think, why our founding documents in this country talk about the pursuit of happiness, because it assumes that it's about a chase after something that's always just out of our grasp. And Luther says, no, it's possible to be content, to find joy and blessing and gratitude with what we have. That doesn't mean that the people who are going hungry today, we should just pat them on the head and say, you should be grateful that at least you're breathing. Sorry, you're hungry, and then walk on our way while we stuff a second Big Mac into our mouths. But it does mean all of us can practice appreciation, can practice contentment with what we have instead of the futile goose chase that is chasing after what somebody else has in the thought that it will make us happier. It won't. And Luther would point us to the wisdom deep, deep, deep there in the old 10 Commandments, in the original 10 Commandments coming out of slavery in Pharaoh's Egypt. The meaning of life is never about having the right stuff or even the right conditions or the right other people. Your so-and-so's spouse seems like a better person, or I want to have their well-behaved kid. No. It is possible to find contentment and joy and goodness right here, right with what I have, right with what you have. Like Paul the Apostle could write to the Philippians, that he learned to be content in whatever circumstances. He knew what it was like to go hungry. He knew what it was like to have enough. And instead of saying my happiness or my well-being, my sense of blessedness rests on whether I've got a certain number of external circumstances going the way I want, I'm going to learn to be content, to find joy and to find grace in God's presence and in what God's given me moment by moment by moment, day by day by day, breath by breath by breath. And that breaks the power of all those loud voices selling us stuff. They are all contingent. They all have power over us if we accept their fundamental premise that I won't be happy unless I own, unless I have, unless I get or acquire what somebody else has, and then I'll be happy. We can be freed of that nonsense. We can be grateful and appreciative of what is in our possession and to be grateful that God has allowed us to have what we have, to use what we have for the sake of other people who maybe aren't gifted with the same things that we have, and then that we can receive the gifts that others place in our hands too. It's again all about neighborliness in a way that we totally miss if we misunderstand the commandments as a bunch of rules you have to follow or else you won't get enough God points to get into heaven when you die. No one ever intended the commandments to be about doing enough good things to get heaven points when you die. It's always about once you've been freed by God, freed from slavery, freed from the whole logic of Pharaoh's Egypt that is built on being dissatisfied and discontent, now we are free to love our neighbor, to receive the gifts of this moment. So whatever you're driving, or hopefully not driving too much these days when we're staying at home indoors, practice contentment. Yeah, there's going to be days we wish we had something else, we could go somewhere else, be somewhere else, or drive something else. But there are blessings right under our noses which are available for us to recognize if we just dare to open our eyes. See you next time here on Cat Shorts. Bye.